tweets that have now literally been viewed around the world, including this claim. Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. And of course, that Twitter storm ended with Trump flat out calling his predecessor, President Obama, bad or sick. Quote, how low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon Watergate, bad or sick guy. Look, I'm a trial lawyer, and it occurs to me that the combination of those tweets is potentially defamatory. Not that I'd expect President Obama to file suit, but let's game this out. If Obama were to sue Trump, a public figure, then Obama's burden of proof would be actual malice, meaning he would have to show knowledge of falsity or reckless disregard for the truth. In other words, it would be reckless for President Trump to say that President Obama committed a crime if President Trump knew that to be false or that he was reckless in making the assertion. Now, of course, truth would be a defense for President Trump. So what evidence or witnesses might Trump present on his own behalf to establish truth? Not Devin Nunes, the Republican chair of the House Intel Committee, who this week said he doesn't think there was an actual tap of Trump Tower, nor James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, who said no FISA warrant was issued on his watch for such a wiretap. FBI Director James Comey will testify on Capitol Hill come Monday. We already know that he was reportedly so upset at President Trump's claim that he wanted the Justice Department to refute it. And Trump can't count on the Brits, whose Prime Minister Theresa May had a spokesperson issue a statement saying the claim that their intel aided Obama in tapping Trump was, quote, ridiculous. Now, on Thursday, Sean Spicer spent 9 minutes quoting a long list of mostly conservative news sources close to him. But none of that is coming into evidence in our hypothetical. It's all hearsay. In fact, it's unreliable, double or triple hearsay at best. Many relied on anonymous sources of the very kind that President Trump has been railing against. Trump relied on Andrew Napolitano at Fox, who had no firsthand information of GCHQ, the equivalent of our NSA, having spied on Trump at the behest of Obama. Fox News itself said it could not substantiate Judge Napolitano's commentary. And speaking of the former president, we know from the statement issued by Obama's spokesperson that he claims to have never ordered the surveillance of a U.S. citizen. So, what's the verdict? The verdict is that President Obama appears to have a very strong claim for libel. He can establish every element of the tort. So what are President Obama's potential damages? Conceivably, he's entitled to punitive damages. Think about that for a minute. Punitive damages are damages designed to hurt, to punish, to deter. But of course, it all depends on the composition of the jury. Because to the 46% that got Trump elected, this is just noise. So what's going to happen next with President Trump's ongoing battle with the intel community? Joining me now, the former director of the CIA and NSA, General Michael Hayden. His memoir, Playing to the Edge, American Intelligence in the Age of Terror, is now in paperback. General, GCHQ is the British equivalent of the NSA that you ran here in the United States. Is it conceivable to you that the British equivalent of the NSA would get a telephone call from an American president who says, please tap the phones or the office space of someone running for president, and that they would cooperate?
Michael, I'm sorry. I'm trying to suppress a laugh here. That is so far from reality, so far from the relationship we have within the Five Eyes community. Look, we're really close. It is an integrated operation, but one absolute rule is that no one can ask a partner to do that which is illegal for himself or that which is illegal for the partner. And that's never been done in the Five Eyes Alliance.
Has the NSA, to your knowledge, I have to ask this just to close the loop, ever been asked in a similar type of circumstance by one of our allies, will you please eavesdrop on someone seeking the highest office in our land?
Michael, That's way up there in terms of seriousness. I'm telling you, we can't do anything for an ally that the ally itself isn't allowed to do. And so, no, you can't export or offshore these requirements because your law prevents you from doing them. I mean, look, this is done by the rule of law. I get it that it's espionage, it's secret, it gets... If they ever got wind of this, my God, it would be a nuclear detonation.
Where is it going, and what concerns General Michael Hayden the most?
Yeah, so number one, because the White House is sticking to this story, in about, what, Michael, a 15-minute period yesterday, we embarrassed one and angered another of our most important allies in the world. So, core question, where is this going? I found that interview with the president and Tucker Carlson quite interesting. Some folks said that he was doubling down on his claim. Actually, I don't think so. I think he was picking up his chips and going to another table. He was backing away from the literal accusations that President Obama had done, which you've reported on, ordered the wiretapping of Trump in Trump Tower. I think where this is going, Michael, and I think this is the lifeline that I think the administration is hoping they can grab onto, is something that we call incidental collection. And it may take a minute, but I can explain to you and your viewers how this might work if you like. So, if we're up against a legitimate foreign intelligence target, and let me just, for purposes of explanation, say we're targeting, and you'd want us to do this, a Russian oligarch who's involved in money laundering, or how about sanctions busting, all right? And so we're on that target. And this is, by the way, Michael, this happens fairly routinely. If that target now gets involved in a communication to, from, or even about a U.S. person, okay, we're still allowed to continue to cover the target. We just have to protect the U.S. person privacy. We do what's called minimize the information. So we might say this Russian oligarch in an extended conversation with a named U.S. person, so on and so forth, said this. And we keep the U.S. identity minimized, unavailable to our customers, unless, of course, Michael, the named U.S. identity is critical to the intelligence. Let's say, for example, that the oligarch was actually arranging an illegal transfer of funds, in which case we would unmask the identity so that we'd have a full picture of the intelligence. Now, keep in mind, we're just targeting the foreigner. This is called incidental collection. And the unmasking of the U.S. identity isn't Trump, isn't Bush. It goes back 40 years, these procedures, to the reforms in the American intelligence community in the 1970s. So I suspect if there is any example of a U.S. identity being unmasked that has any relationship to the Trump campaign or Trump Tower. And again, Michael, very normal, very correct, very legal. I think at that point, the White House goes, aha, I told you so. I think this is where it's going.
Do I understand General Hayden to be predicting that perhaps the next step of this is that the Trump White House seeks to criminalize the incidental collection of U.S. intelligence? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, mischaracterize and criminalize. And Michael, very tellingly, Devin Nunes and Adam Schiff, chair and ranking of the House Intelligence Committee within the last 36 hours, has actually asked the American intelligence community, was there any incidental collection? Were any identities unmasked? And who requested the unmasking? So I do think we are going to that point again, which I think at the end of the day will be mischaracterized, and there will be an attempt to claim that that's some sort of violation.
Okay, that's a pretty significant prognostication from General Hayden. What would be the impact of that on the intelligence community.
Look, anybody who knows the business would simply go, yeah, that's how this is always done. This is actually a very good way to do our job and protect American privacy. And so it would be just kind of the wheels of the process going forward. By the way, Michael, that procedure I just laid out for you is approved by the Attorney General, reviewed annually, and those procedures are annually laid out to the intelligence committees who understand them. And again, remember that unmasking thing I did, Michael? Is so routine that it's done within the agency. You don't need to go to the White House. You don't need to go to the court. It doesn't even come to the director. It's done by the analyst in close cooperation with NSA lawyers who know this best.
Imagine that you're still running the CIA or you're still running the NSA, and President Trump calls General Hayden and says, General, I need to know, was the Trump Tower surveilled? Could you answer that question?
Of course I could. And if he had the follow-on question, was there any incidental collection, and did you unmask any identities, I could answer that question too, because, Michael, I have. Recall, this is years ago, when we were trying to get an ambassador, Mr. Bolton, confirmed for the United Nations. He had actually asked for some unmasking of identities, and some members of Congress were kind of rending their garments that this was some kind of great offense. I went down, explained the process to them, and actually indicated that these requests from Ambassador Bolton were actually quite appropriate and innocent. So again, we're not out of the norm here. It's just new to a lot of people. It's not new itself.
Final question, and you've just answered it, but I want to underscore this. He often watches us. Thank you for that, Mr. President. We like you watching. If he's watching right now at Mar-a-Lago, he could pick up that phone this minute, call the CIA, call the NSA, and ask the question, was Trump Tower surveilled? And he'd get an answer, right?
Michael, all he needed to do 2 weeks ago was to roll over, punch that button on the red switch, and say, get these guys down here for lunch, and he would have been satisfied, and we would have been done with this.
General Hayden, thank you as always. I really appreciate your being here.
Thanks, Michael.
What are your thoughts? Tweet me, wow. Tweet me at Smirkanish. And nothing prevents him. I mean, just nothing would preclude that kind of a phone call from being made at this moment. So then, of course, folks, you got to ask, why doesn't he make that call? Maybe because he already knows what the answer is and doesn't want to have to then be held accountable for it. Anyway, tweet me at Smirkanish. I'll read some during the course of the program. Catherine, hit me with something. Smirkanish, to 46% who got Trump elected, you and the media are just noise. Robert, that's sad, isn't it? Because I deal in facts, my friends, and I just presented to you as a trial lawyer how this issue would be litigated if that were to be the case. And what a shame if a certain number among us don't care about the facts. Up next, Chris Cillizza, editor of the Washington Post, The Fix, wrote that Sean Hannity had the worst week in Washington and that he had hit a new low on Thursday. But would Spicer's boss agree? Chris is here to discuss.
Unapologetically admitting that President Obama was born in the United States. He blamed Hillary Clinton for starting it all, which is not true. He congratulated himself for putting the issue to rest, which really is not true. What is true, however, is that in a very basic way, it is a flip-flop for Donald Trump. A 5-year-long, utterly bizarre, no basis in reality flip-flop, but a flip-flop nonetheless. And it's not the first. 360's Randy Kay reports.
Some might call it a flip-flop, others a softening. But whatever it is, Donald Trump seems to have changed his stance on rounding up millions of illegal immigrants and sending them packing. This is what he told MSNBC in November last year.
You're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely.
But just last month, Trump sounded like the deportation force was no longer when he spoke with Anderson Cooper.
11 million who have not committed a crime.
We're
There's going to be a path to legalization. Is that right?
You know it's a process. You can't take 11 at one time and just say, boom, you're gone.
That's not the only time Trump has flip-flopped. On the very day Donald Trump announced his run for the White House, he made this bold statement about his objection to the Iraq War.
He said, don't hit Iraq because you're going to totally destabilize the Middle East.
But it turns out back in 2002, in his first public comments about the war, he told Howard Stern he was actually in favor of the war. Kinda. Listen.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
On the issue of nukes, he told the New York Times in March that the biggest problem in the world is nuclear proliferation. Yet in that same interview, he also said he wouldn't object to South Korea and Japan getting nuclear weapons for protection against North Korea. Trump has also done a 180 on abortion. Listen to him on NBC back in 1999, at a time when he was considering a run for the White House.
Very pro-choice. I hate the concept of abortion. I hate it. I hate everything it stands for. I cringe when I listen to people debating the subject. But I just believe in choice.
In that same interview, Trump went on to say he'd also support a woman's right to late-term abortion. But that was then. On CNN in recent months, Trump made it clear he has, quote, evolved on the issue of abortion.
As you know, I'm pro-life. I've been pro-life for a long time.
I am pro-life. Everybody knows I'm pro-life. As you know, I'm pro-life. And I was originally pro-choice.
Trump now wants to ban all abortions, except in the case of incest or rape, or if the mother's life is at risk. Trump has even done an about-face on Hillary Clinton. She and Bill Clinton were guests at Trump's wedding back in 2005. On Fox in 2012, he called her a terrific woman, saying she works really hard and does a good job. Now, facing Clinton in the general election, Trump is saying something very different.
A lying, crooked Hillary. Love to say. Because she is a liar. She's a bad person.
As Trump wrote in his book, The Art of the Deal, he never gets too attached to one deal or one approach. Seems that holds true for some of his policy positions, too. Randy Kaye, CNN, New York.
All right, our thanks to Randy. Back now with the panel. Errol Lewis, I want to start with you because the Clinton campaign is talking a lot about Donald Trump's statement today. In the flip-flop aspect of it, it is not necessarily what they're focused on here. How fertile of this is an issue for them now and going forward?
I don't think they're going to make much more out of it because honestly, first of all, they've got a target-rich environment, you could call it. They've got a lot of different things, a lot of differences that they want to contrast between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I think their polling would probably suggest something that we've all sort of seen over the last year, which is that people are not rushing to Donald Trump to the extent that they are because he's so fantastically consistent. That's not what they're looking for. He's pushing a lot of other different buttons, and there's a lot of dispute about which buttons he's pushing, and are some of them kind of the appeals to the worst in people's nature. But I haven't run into anybody on the campaign trail who said, I like Donald Trump because he's consistent. You know where he stands. It all fits together. It's philosophically rigorous. That's not the kind of candidate he is.
No, I'm just curious, though, what the Clinton campaign or how much they do intend to press the issue, the birther issue. Glenn Thrush, your old friend from Politico today, he noted something very interesting. He said he doesn't believe that white voters supporting Donald Trump are unaware of these positions or unaware of his birther past. So why would him saying anything different about it or saying anything at all make any difference to the voters he already has?
Well, I actually don't think that Glenn was talking about white voters just backing Trump. I think he was talking about white voters in general. And so the question right now is both Clinton and Trump are appealing to a certain demographic of white voters. And that is where Trump needs to drive up the margin. That is where Clinton needs to drive up the margin on both sides. The Clinton campaign has tried for a while to press the case and demonstrate ways where they would argue that Trump has shown bigoted statements or bigoted behavior and so forth, to try to express, to work on concerns that suburban voters and moderates have about voting for somebody who has been labeled a racist. The concern for Democrats, or the thing that is frustrating for Democrats, is that has not really taken hold despite the number of instances that Democrats have pointed to. And I think that's what Glenn was talking about. It's not really so much the diehard Trump supporters who really, he has had a base of support that has been with him this whole time. It's how does she peel off certain voters, and what is it going to take?
Yeah.
Well, it's also the Democrats need to keep the numbers of voters of color nailed to Hillary Clinton. In a lot of these polls, especially early on, he was getting 0% of the black vote, 1%.
Is today mobilizing in that case?
Well, it's hard to know. There's a lot of chaff right now in the polling, so it's hard to know. But part of the Democratic Party strategy has to be to keep voters of color not just bolted to Hillary Clinton, but also passionate about coming out. And to the extent that there are voters who are not passionate about Hillary herself, saying, listen, the alternative is someone who has trafficked in bigotry is an important point. So whether or not these sort of more white swing voters come this way or that way, a big part of this is saying, hey, listen, don't let this guy off the mat when it comes to voters of color.
All right, Jeffrey Lord, disembodied Jeffrey Lord, is not with us in studio, but is with us in spirit. You know,
Don, I want to
hang on.
I want to say something here about this is important because this has not been mentioned today. Late today, Mediaite put up on the front page of their site tweets from James Asher, who is the former bureau chief of the McClatchy News Service. And Mr. Asher says in 2 tweets, I'll read part of one of them, Sid Blumenthal, longtime HRC buddy, told me in person, Obama born in Kenya. And in the second tweet, he says that Mr. Blumenthal asked him and asked McClatchy to investigate this. Now, if that is correct, then what we've got here today is a massive fraud, is deceit, like with the pneumonia incident.
Let me tell you what we know. Let me tell you what we know about this so far. James Asher from McClatchy did tweet that. CNN reached out to Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal said, this is false. CNN is also trying to reach the McClatchy.
Yeah,
hang on. Let me finish. I'm not saying, look, I'm just being transparent about where we are in this story right now since you brought it up. CNN's also tried to contact James Asher to find out his side of the story. CNN also reached out to Clinton campaign staffers who say, to their knowledge at that time, Sidney Blumenthal did not work for the campaign. Yes, he's a friend of Hillary. Hey, Jeffrey, let me finish. I'm telling you what we know here. He did not work for the campaign, but yes, he is a friend of Hillary Clinton. At this point, we're looking into this further, but that is where that all is. And I want to put this to Maggie Haberman right now. The qualitative difference, even if you take this all, then it happened. Even if Sidney Blumenthal did do this, at this point, we don't know. He denied it to CNN. But even if he did do that, is there equivalency between that and Donald Trump for 5 years talking about this?
There is not. I mean, if Sidney Blumenthal did that, then that is something that I suspect Hillary Clinton will get asked about. Sidney Blumenthal has denied it, but I saw that tweet as well and reached out to the author of the tweet and have not heard back. But it is not the same as a candidate saying frontally on stage, this is the big question, this is the issue. It's not at all, and Hillary Clinton herself never said it. That would be the equivalent.
It's also just weird that they keep saying, well, she did it first, so I can do it too. It's like, no, you're a grown man. This is not kindergarten. You can't just point to the other kid and say that they said it too. If it's wrong, if it shows bad judgment, it shows bad judgment. And pointing to some friend of a friend is not a good excuse.
All right, guys, hang on one second.
It's a political hack. It's not a person running for president. I think that's the most important point.
All right, guys, hang on. We have a lot more coming up. Hillary Clinton, not the only one weighing in on the Trump birther escapade today. First Lady Michelle Obama did her first solo campaign rally for Hillary Clinton. We'll have that next.